Oh,
Hello, my name is Tricia Dahl. I am a senior research assistant from Yale University School of Medicine. And I want to spend some time talking about some different types of e-cigarettes that are popular today. And then I'm going to go into the reasons that we should be concerned about them. And then finally, I'll talk specifically about rates of e-cigarette use among youth and discuss links between vaping and the use of other substances and some interventions that we have out now. So let's begin with prevalence data. This is brand new 2020 from December 15th data from the Monitoring the Future survey of more than 11,800 students from 112 schools across the US. The data was only collected from February through March of 2020. It's usually a full year survey. However, it was stopped once the pandemic hit, so we're unsure what, if anything, changed throughout the pandemic, unfortunately. Also, it should be noted that this data represents only a quarter of the normal sample size. But looking at what we have here, the number of students reporting past year vaping was unchanged from 2019. So roughly 1 in 3 of our 10th and 12th graders and 1 in 6 of our 8th graders. So continuing with the Monitoring the Future survey results from 2020, we do see a significant decline in reports of daily or nearly daily use, which means 20 plus times in the past month. And that's vaping of nicotine in the past year. So the numbers have nearly halved. We also see a decrease in those reporting to use the Juul in the past year, significantly in older grades. This was previously the most popular brand among teens. So if we want to look at the full sample from 2019, breaking it down to past month prevalence, this is what the survey results showed. The first cluster represents vaping of any substance in the past 30 days. So whether it be nicotine, THC, or anything else. So in the past 30 days, 12.2% of 8th graders, that's 1 in 12, 25% of our 10th graders, which is 1 in 4, and almost 31% of our 12th graders, 1 in 3, report vaping any substance in the past 30 days. Moving over to the next columns, you can see the numbers of those who reported vaping nicotine in the past 30 days. So we have 9.6% of 8th graders, almost 20% of 10th graders, and 25.5% of our 12th graders have reported using nicotine in the past 30 days. The percentage of marijuana vaping also rose from 2.6 to 3.9% of 8th graders, 8 to 12.6% of 10th graders, and 7.5 to 14% of 12th graders. This is the second largest single increase for high school seniors ever measured in 45 years, and that number was only surpassed by the increase in nicotine vaping from 2017 to 2018. So what are e-cigarettes? They're battery-powered devices that originally were developed to vaporize a nicotinized or denicotinized solution by an inhalation-activated heating element. When you vape, which is the term for puffing on an e-cigarette, the battery heats a heating coil which vaporizes or aerosolizes a liquid solution, often called e-juice or e-liquid. The user breathes in or pushes a button. The heater turns on and boils the liquid. The vapor forms inside the device, and the user breathes in the nicotine vapor and then exhales just like smoking. So I want to just give you a little bit of a background about e-cigarettes and how they evolved over time. So there are over 400 different e-cigarette brands on the market, each with its own website. The first generation, which you see here, are called cigalikes because they closely resemble tobacco cigarettes, pipes, and cigars. They came in 1 dose of nicotine and 1, possibly 2 flavors. You'd either get tobacco or menthol, and that was it. Then the second generation of e-cigarettes, called vape pens or tank-style devices, increased in size. They stopped trying to look like regular tobacco products. They have a bigger battery, they're rechargeable, and they're more customizable. So you choose the color, You choose the flavor of your liquid, and you can choose the level of nicotine that you're putting in the device. The third generation of e-cigarettes brought variable voltage and mechanical mods. The mechanical mods are characterized by the lack of an integrated circuit. They can resemble a large pen like most of the second generation devices, or a deck of cards with a protruding mouthpiece. These devices here are generally the devices that if you're behind a car and it looks like it's on fire, it's usually the amount of aerosol that's produced by these devices. The fourth generation of e-cigarettes are mods that traded much of the plastics in favor of glass and stainless steel. They used temperature control devices, which made them much safer and easier to manage. They also featured sub-ohm tanks. The newest form of e-cigarettes are the pod-style devices like Juul and Soren, along with the disposable devices like Puff Bar, Cali Bar, and Hype Bar. So what are we concerned about? Let's start with the contents of the e-liquids and the pods. E-cigarettes are not well regulated, so you cannot be exactly sure what's in them. However, most of the time, e-cigarettes contain the following. Propylene glycol, also called PG, is a liquid used to flavor food products, and it's considered safe for edible products. It's used to provide a strong throat hit. So something cigarette smokers say they like about smoking cigarettes is the feeling they get in the back of their throat. PG offers that same feeling in an e-cigarette. The other substance that makes up the base of all liquids is vegetable glycerin, or VG. This is a liquid made from vegetable oil that creates the cloud. It has a slightly sweet aftertaste. We don't know how safe it is to inhale, but we do know that both PG and VG are known respiratory irritants, and neither have ever been FDA approved for constant inhalation. E-juice also contains flavors which are made of different chemicals. So we'd love to be able to say that strawberry e-liquid was just crushed up strawberries. Well, there's nothing strawberry about it. It's just a bunch of chemicals that's hard to say the names. And together, these chemicals all make a flavor that tastes very similar to strawberry. So research to date suggests that some flavors can cause an inflammatory response in lung cells. Inhaling flavoring agents, which are often aldehyde, poses a health concern since these chemicals are similar to toxic aldehydes found in cigarette smoke, like formaldehyde. Also, mixing multiple flavors increases the toxicity. There are some flavors out there like cinnamaldehyde, for example, which is in cinnamon bun, red hot, fireball, anything with a cinnamon taste. If you read the label carefully, you'd see that it says that you shouldn't use it in a plastic pod or a plastic cartridge because it's actually a corrosive. So you should be using it in a glass pod. They seem to overlook the part that it's a corrosive. It's okay to inhale, just make sure it's in a glass pod. When an e-liquid's vaporized, it also can contain metallic particles from the heating coil that can create toxic effects on vital organs. Some e-liquids also contain high levels of ethanol, which is a fancy name for alcohol. This is used as a solvent, and inhaling it can have toxic effects on the brain. Finally, nearly all e-liquids contain nicotine, which is a highly addictive chemical. So let's get into nicotine. Research suggests that nicotine exposure during adolescence may have lasting adverse effects on brain development and lead to other negative outcomes. For example, nicotine exposure is associated with increased anxiety, depression, difficulty learning and remembering, and being more impulsive. Unfortunately, many popular e-cigarettes, especially the Juul, contain very high levels of nicotine, and nicotine exposure also increases an adolescent's vulnerability to trying and getting addicted to other substances. So let's get into nicotine. What are we so concerned about with the nicotine? Well, nicotine is a stimulant and it's highly addictive. It causes changes in brain chemistry quickly and leaves the brain craving more. So when you inhale an e-cigarette, The nicotine enters the brain after passing through the lungs, then it binds to pleasure receptors in the brain, and that causes the release of a pleasure chemical such as dopamine and provides the user with a temporary feeling of pleasure. This is what they like about it. It may not sound dangerous, but in reality, the nicotine interferes with the body's natural ability to experience or communicate pleasure. So what happens when somebody vapes on a regular basis is those dopamine receptors realize that there's something else coming on board that's releasing this chemical, and they no longer have to do it as the body's natural response. So over time, those dopamine receptors slowly cut back the amount of dopamine that they release. Well, what happens is when an individual decides they no longer want to vape, they don't get those same natural feelings of pleasure anymore. And the only way to get those feelings and to feel normal is to reintroduce the nicotine. Studies in animals suggest that the teen brain may get very quickly addicted even after exposure to small levels of nicotine. And nicotine exposure may have lasting adverse effects on brain development. So once those new pathways are developed from the nicotine and the dopamine receptors start to cut back, those pathways can often be very difficult to re-engage so they can feel normal and not crave the nicotine. Nicotine doesn't just affect your brain, it also affects the pathways like those involved in memory, attention, and can cause deficits in learning in teens as well. So nicotine can also have effects all over the body. For example, using nicotine can make your heart beat faster. It releases adrenaline. So it causes or activates that fight or flight response. Causes sudden release of glucose, as well as an increase in blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration. Nicotine can independently cause trouble breathing and damage your lungs outside of all the chemicals and toxins in cigarettes. Nicotine can cause you to have increased acid reflux, and what happens is there's a muscle on top of your stomach that keeps all the acids that break down our foods down in our stomach. When you have an overload of nicotine in your system, that muscle relaxes, allowing the acids to come up, causing acid reflux or heartburn. We've also found in animal models that it can negatively impact reproductive organs. And something a lot of people are not aware of is that nicotine suppresses insulin output from the pancreas, which causes hyperglycemia or elevated sugar levels in your body. Most importantly, while you may not feel the effects of all these changes now, long-term use of nicotine can change the functioning of all these organ systems. Although the science on the relationship between COVID and tobacco use, such as cigarettes and e-cigarettes, is still not clear, using tobacco products like cigarettes can lead to respiratory conditions like COPD. Therefore, someone who becomes infected with COVID-19 has the potential of having worse health outcomes. Although scientific evidence is incomplete, some studies have suggested that the use of e-cigarettes may add to your risk of getting COVID-19 and may contribute to the severity of the illness if you do contract the virus. So our biggest concern with the newer pod-style devices like Juul, like these new disposables, is that it delivers the same amount of nicotine that's found in a pack of cigarettes. There's about 200 puffs in these devices. This is higher than any other nicotine product out on the market. The Juul uses salt-based nicotine, and what happens is salt-based nicotine, as opposed to free-base nicotine, is free-base nicotine, which is nicotine in its purest form, but they add salt to it. And the reason they add salt to it is it allows you to have a much, much higher level of nicotine without that irritation. So with free-base nicotine, I'm going to go over to here, that usually ranges anywhere from 0 to 36 milligrams per milliliter. Once you get to around 18 milligrams of nicotine, it starts to become very irritating. So by adding salt to it, you can reach levels of 59 plus of nicotine and not have that same irritating feeling. And the way this works is it uses something called benzoic acid to make that smoother delivery of nicotine. Well, the problem with benzoic acid is when you mix benzoic acid with vitamin C, which a lot of these e-liquids have, and you combine it with heat, which we already discussed in how these delivery systems work, those three together turn benzoic acid into a chemical called benzene. And benzene is a well-known carcinogen or cancer-causing chemical. So what is the concern about the vapor? Well, there are a lot of misconceptions of what e-cigarette vapor is. Many people think it's simply a harmless water vapor. However, the vapor is actually aerosol. It's a propellant for many products, including hairspray and cleaning products. A vapor is a chemical that has evaporated. An aerosol is a mixture of chemical particles that are suspended in a gas and can contain many different types of chemicals within it. When water vapor condenses, the water is simply absorbed through the membranes of the lungs and into the bloodstream. PG and VG, which we know are the base of all e-liquids and are found in all e-cigarettes, are larger molecules that are not as easily absorbed when they're inhaled deeply into the lungs. This can cause inflammation and damage. You may or may not feel these effects right away, but someone who has asthma, that aerosol exposure could definitely make it worse. Another concern that we have about vaping is the gateway effect. Teens who vape are more likely to try other types of tobacco. Studies show that those who start using e-cigarettes quickly progress to using traditional cigarettes. In fact, one study suggests that teens who use e-cigarettes are 6 times more likely to move on to conventional cigarettes. So we know there are risks associated with e-cigarette use, so why are so many kids using them? One major reason has been shown in numerous studies: curiosity. In addition, many youth hold perceptions that e-cigarettes are healthier than tobacco cigarettes, that they can be used anywhere, even though indoor smoke-free laws technically prohibit their use, and that they can help people quit smoking, or so it's said. However, it is important to point out that e-cigarettes are not an improved smoking cessation device, and the majority of kids who start using e-cigarettes have never smoked a cigarette before. So that smoking cessation part of it is not relevant. The most consistently identified reason for experimentation and continued use of e-cigarettes among youth is because of the flavors. There are over 1,000 different flavors on the market. As you can see, anywhere from pizza and whipped cream to unicorn puke. So there is everything out there. 82%, almost 83 actually, of adolescents said that they use flavor e-liquids. Fruit was the most common at 73.1%, then mint at 55.8%, menthol at 37%, and candy, desserts, and other sweets were at 36.4%. So while the e-cigarette industry has made claims that flavors do not appeal to youth, in my research and in others, we have found that not only are flavors appealing, but that they are uniquely the thing that drives youth. When predicting vaping frequency in adults, the only significant factor was whether their e-liquid contained nicotine. However, among adolescents, use was driven by the use of sweet flavors like desserts, fruit, and alcohol e-liquids. In addition, using a greater number of flavored e-liquids was associated with vaping more frequently. So we most recently in 2019, December, we did focus groups with 62 teens in 8 different high schools. And we asked them what their reasons for using was. There were both vapors that were current vapors and those who were past vapors. So our current vapors average about 17 days in the past month. So here are some reasons that they gave us for use. If I'm with my family, like I don't even think about it, but like if we're in a group and someone has one, it just makes me fiend. Honestly, I overthink things a lot. So like I feel like when I'm hitting the device that it like makes me stop thinking and like all the stuff that's going on inside my head. So it's like a stress reliever. If like someone has one, I'll use it, but I'm not looking for it. Like I'm not trying to buy one or anything. I don't feel that buzz no more. So you just want the buzz again. So you just continue to go buy more. I just hit it to hit it. Like I don't even really feel anything anymore. Like if I don't hit it for a while and then I do, I get like a little high head, but like I'll just be lying in bed and I'll just hit it while watching TV. Like if I was bored, I would just hit it. Not because I needed it or wanted it. If I was bored, I just grab it. The second that bell rings, I'm in the bathroom with it. Everybody's in the bathroom with it. An additional motivation for use that only recently has been investigated is vaping for weight loss and appetite suppression. Smoking has been used as a weight management tool in the past due largely to the fact that nicotine has an appetite suppressant and it increases daily caloric burn in users. However, vaping presents a unique situation where users are able to get nicotine effects as well as experience flavors that correspond to high-calorie food and beverages. So rather than eating a 400-calorie cupcake, you can experience the flavor without any calories plus appetite suppression. Given the high prevalence of weight concern and dieting, it seems like weight-motivated vaping may be occurring in youth. In a recent study, we found that 9% of high school students were vaping for weight loss and 13% for appetite control. The most common reasons for disliking e-cigarettes after the simple cost factor were the negative health effects. So feeling sick, gastrointestinal issues, constantly coughing, sharp shooting chest pains that come and go, trouble breathing, shortness of breath, sore throat, phlegm stuck in their chest, worsening of asthma symptoms, and headache when refraining from use. There's also a concern about vaping other substances such as marijuana. Some vaporizers have special dry herb cartridges. You can also use hash oil, wax, and other THC concentrates with special attachments. Although marijuana may have medicinal uses, we know very little about the health benefits, if any, of using e-cigarettes to vape cannabis. We don't know what doses are delivered when it's vaped. So when one uses combustible marijuana, you know exactly how much marijuana you're getting. When you use THC oil or any of these vape devices like dabbing, it's very hard to judge how much you're actually getting in that single hit. We also know little about what toxicities vaping cannabis may have, but one would think it would be similar to the effects I described earlier for inhaling aerosols. Smoking or inhaled drugs enter the lungs and are quickly absorbed into the bloodstream through tiny vessels lining the air sacs. The high one experiences from inhaling drugs is often immediate and intense. Dabbing is the latest marijuana craze, described as freebasing marijuana. Butane hash oil, or BHO, is an oil or wax-like substance extracted from the marijuana plant that can be up to 30 times stronger than combustible marijuana. A practice related to dabbing includes placing hash oil in vaping devices, which look like e-cigarettes, but they don't emit any smoke. They also don't have that characteristic pot odor, so they're harder to detect. Popularity when inhaling hash oil is increasing because it's the fastest way to get an intense high and also is discreet. So side effects from dabbing, it's very easy for one to overdose when they're dabbing, again, because you have no idea how much of the substance you're getting. Some of the side effects include rapid heartbeat, blackouts, feeling like something's crawling under your skin, loss of consciousness, and psychotic symptoms like paranoia and hallucinations. Just to quickly touch upon marijuana and its potential risks, they are numerous, and high school users are unaware of many of these. So I'm just going to leave that there for a second so you can take a peek at some of these potential risks. So as of February 18th, 2020, which is when this data was last updated, again, because of the pandemic and there were other things going on, there have been reported cases of severe pulmonary illness linked to vaping or e-cigarette use called e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. The easy name for that is EVALI. These cases included symptoms such as coughing, shortness of breath, chest pain, fever, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. Some patients reported symptoms to have occurred over a few days, and some reported to have occurred over a few weeks. Vaping-related disorders have ranged from mild to severe with hospitalization, intensive care with breathing machines, and in some cases, death. In most cases, but not all, people experiencing these symptoms were using CBD and marijuana or THC e-liquids and using e-cigarette devices and e-liquids that were mixed at home or purchased off the market, such as purchasing an e-liquid or device on the street, not from a licensed retailer. Laboratory data shows that vitamin E acetate, an additive in some THC-containing e-liquids, is strongly linked to EVALI. Vitamin E acetate, which is inhaled, acts as a coating of honey that sticks around the lungs. It's added to dilute THC oil in order to increase profits or as a thickening agent. So someone will buy the THC oil. They obviously want to make more money when they sell it. So they add this vitamin E acetate. It makes it look like a much more pure form of THC oil. And it actually will stretch that amount so they can sell more and make more money. Unfortunately, they're not thinking of the harm that this is causing. So I put this slide up here just to show you some of the advertised ways that are out there for kids to hide a vape. The only way that we are going to be able to get through to kids and to let them understand the dangers is to educate them. You're never going to be able to catch them every time that they're using. Punishment isn't the answer. Suspending them from school isn't the answer. Educating is the answer. They need to understand why this is a problem. So that brings me to the interventions. Interventions are being developed. Here are some resources available. The efficacy of many of these is still being established, but they can be used as referral sources for youth and teachers. Our group, led by Dr. Krishnan Saran, has successfully developed similar interventions for cigarette smoking among youth in the past. We're currently developing and testing a program funded by the American Heart Association aimed at reducing vaping among youth. This is a fully remote, quit nicotine intervention for adolescent e-cigarette users who want to quit vaping. It's a 4-week-long intervention, which includes 2 components: a remote contingency management intervention that involves the delivery of incentives for staying abstinent, and weekly vaping cognitive behavioral therapy. We follow up with them 4 times over the course of a year. We will test the use of individual counseling focused on teaching them the skills to manage withdrawal, deal with cravings, and coping with skills, and the coping skills they need so they can be successful. And we will forward this information on if you have a child who is interested in this study. teens, the highlight for them, they get to earn up to $436 to quit vaping. And the reason we have to say up to is the fact that if we test them and it shows that they have vaped, then part of their payment gets reset, so it's not quite 436. If they drop out of the program, obviously they're not going to earn $436. So with that, I am happy to address any questions that you may have. Feel free to email me. My email address is Tricia, Tricia, Dahl, D as in David, AHL, @yale.edu. And I thank you for your time.